Hey, welcome everybody. It's PAX Prime 2014. This is the third of Motiga's workshops this weekend. If you've seen the other two, and if you haven't, I don't know what's wrong with you. If you've seen the other two, they were a little bit more demos talking about our process and going through sort of point by point some of what we've done in making Gigantic so far. This one's going to be a little bit different. It's more of a town hall format. We are going to be talking through a few different topics, but we're really looking for feedback and questions from you guys here and those watching over the interwebs. So this is the Gigantic Community Town Hall. We want to talk about how we define the multiplayer experience. And to help me talk about that, I have all of these fine people who I'm going to let introduce themselves.
My name is Carter McBee. I'm a gameplay designer.
Ian Berlenberg, I'm the Manager of Business Intelligence and Analytics.
I'm Allie Murdoch. I'm a community manager under Troy Hewitt. I also go by Mo Huggles online.
I'm John Hargrove. I do progression design for Gigantic. I go as Mo_Nanoman online. You might see that on the subreddit.
Nice. Okay, so we'll just dive in. First thing I wanted to talk about was play balance. You know, there are a lot of things that define a player's experience, but a few of them have so much immediate and lasting impact as whether or not the game is balanced well. For us, because we're trying to do something that's pretty new, there's a lot of experimentation to figure out how to approach this game. The characters don't necessarily fall into traditional class roles. We do definitely look at kind of what role they can play on a team, but it's not just you know, the way you would look at it in a MOBA or even a traditional RPG. Stepping back from that, when we think philosophically about what we want to do, we look to try to have all the characters feel overpowered when you're playing them, and maybe a little bit when you're playing against them. We want you to feel like there's something that you can do that no one else can do, and we want to give you opportunities to feel kind of clever and feel like you're breaking the game. And doing that while not actually letting you break the game is a big challenge. So we'll go ahead and let each one of these guys talk about their role in making sure we accomplish that.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we want from a balance standpoint is we want all of the heroes that you play as to be equally viable. So, you know, you can play them as a new player, you can play them as a really highly skilled player, and they're viable through all skill levels. And so we have three main ways that we're kind of tracking and using stuff to balance our game. The main one up to this point has been our internal playtests, which we do every day. It's all the developers playing against each other. We usually run a couple games a day, and then after that, everyone kind of sends their feedback. We'll talk about it internally. We'll have discussions. And then there's also, of course, the community feedback, which is super important, which we're just ramping up right now, which has been awesome. So we can get not only new player experience feedback, but also feedback from players who have been playing the game for a while now. And that's really important to us. We take that back and we look at it and talk about it internally. We'll have design meetings where we go over the community feedback. And then the third thing is the analytics, which is data that comes directly out of the games that we're playing. So we can use that to balance against what we're feeling internally and then what we're hearing from the community and really look at it in contrast to what's actually happening in the game. So, you know, if everyone's complaining that a character is overpowered, we can go into the data and be like, well, actually, that character is slightly underpowered according to all this statistical data that we have, which is really awesome to be able to do.
Yeah, so, you know, the analytics are always helpful, and we love having all that information.
Thanks, Ian.
Kind of something that I focus a lot on is the feels of players. You know, I want to make sure that even though something in paper sounds like perfect and doesn't need work, if someone feels that it is different, then that's kind of my job, is to pick up on that and make sure that we don't ignore that stuff just because, oh, well, some statistics say otherwise, or you know what I mean. So that's kind of part of the things that I do. Another thing that I like to do is after reading feedback, I like to go into the game and check out what I was reading. If someone says this character is so good and this particular ability feels really powerful, then I'll go in and just try it out myself. I know the designers do that as well, but as someone that has to take the players' feedback and bring it to the developers, I like to know the game very well as well, so I know what you guys are talking about. So as far as balance goes, that's those are the things that I like to focus on. We also have some competitive testing that we do. We just started alpha last week, but before that, we had a couple groups. One of them is a very competitive group of players who are seasoned vets, basically, and they help us a lot with the fine tuning of the numbers and how this hero feels against this hero in this situation. So there's a lot of cool stuff that we do with those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're really early enough that it's not just a question of the numbers, but also being able to talk about the mechanics and figure out if they're concepts that are fundamentally flawed or that could work better if designed a different way. As Ali said, we have two different groups that we test with because, as Carter mentioned, we want to be able to look at the play experience for a broad spectrum of players and make sure things are balanced that way. So we've got a group that's just sort of general player population, and a second group where I think my main directive is everybody in there should be better than I am, so that I can learn from them rather than the other way around.
Which is not actually that hard.
Okay, we may have to go to Ian for some
So, I actually
refereeing of
I
this.
actually can't
Where's
tell
Chip?
who is the best and who isn't the best in our studio.
I think if we actually looked at Carter's teams versus my teams, who won more, he might not be talking trash.
We'll have to rely on Ian to give us that data.
I want that.
Who wants that information the most? I wonder.
Okay, anyway.
So all of these guys are right on the money. I think that what really helps us make a better game is we're looking at the numbers from a very early point in development, and more importantly, it allows us to have a complete picture of what's going on. Particularly when the group is small, it allows you to have a lot of conversation, a lot of detail into what people are feeling. But what tends to happen is that the most vocal person in the room will lead that discussion and will lead the thinking of the group. So looking at the data in parallel to all these conversations that we have allows us to really see okay, this is the most vocally shared piece of feedback, but let's see at what's happening in the entire group and the entire system, because there's always bubbles of groups of people that just behave differently and look at things differently, and it's good to have that knowledge as well.
I was going to say I mostly participate in the play balance by just giving feedback after the internal play tests that happen pretty much daily around 3:30 to 4. I do a lot of yelling on the forums as well as yelling in person, generally loud enough so that the gameplay designers can hear me. It always feels like the moment I master a hero, they nerf it, because if I'm good with it, it's obviously OP.
Come on, give yourself a little credit. You're not bad.
That is actually the guideline I use.
Knew it!
Okay, I don't know if any of you guys wanted to bring up any questions or discussion points about balance before we move on to another topic.
Let me walk over to you with a microphone. Tell us your name and ask your question.
I'm Clint Oliver, frequently known by as Malchior on the Twitch and Reddit. And y'all said y'all collect analytics from all those play sessions. Are y'all actively collecting analytics right now on the PAX machines and going to go review those this next upcoming week?
So I want to I want to share something. As a community manager, you can't see me on camera, which is your luck. Because I
That is very
just
fortunate.
tore up. But Ian and the community team work really closely together, and I noted that Ian sent out a tweet saying something to the effect of that we have heat maps that we can share. Is that true?
If the powers that be in the community team are happy to share that, and James feels okay with it, yeah.
We really don't care what James wants, but the community. I'm joking,
Jeez,
jokes, telling
everyone's
jokes.
James today.
But no, I'm kidding. But for us, we want to review them and take a look. But we want to share them with the community. I'm certain that James wouldn't have a problem with that. And if he does, maybe I won't see you later. There's another question back here.
Hi, I'm Jeremy, known as R&R, and you guys changed Roland recently. Was there any specific reason why? I like it. He's definitely a little bit better.
So it was twofold. It was a general discussion about whether or not he was too powerful, but also it really had to do with whether or not he was too sort of scattered in his concept, whether he had a clear role or whether he was too good at too many different things. And so then we stepped back and talked about what the essence of the character was and what we wanted to get out of him and how to focus him into that more. So for those who aren't familiar with the character, he's sort of a hit-and-run range guy. He's got a grappling hook that's probably his most defining skill that lets him escape and also get to annoying spots to kind of rain down fire on other people. And he also had a really effective long-range shot. Not as much of a sniper as our sniper Amani, but able to hold his own at any range with anybody. And, it really wasn't emphasizing his mobility. It just made his mobility feel even more extreme. And so rather than particularly nerfing his ability to escape, which was kind of the fun defining thing about him, we switched his weapon to more shotgun-like weapon to better pair with his abilities. So, that's definitely one of the things that comes up when you're looking at balance. It's one thing to recognize there's a problem, but then trying to figure out what the right solution is the second part of that puzzle. I think with that, it had actually been an idea that had been kicked around for a long time. I think probably the first rumblings I heard was just one of the artists who was complaining that he felt, from a thematic standpoint, that Roland was all over the place. And so when we started talking about the balance implications, that partially sparked the discussion that led to switching him to a blunderbuss.
From the data perspective, I wasn't aware that these conversations were having, but I could easily tell when they happened and that it was for the better. Simply because whenever we would see that particular hero's KDR, it would go all over the place, depending on who played him and what enemy he was facing. And after that switch, the KDR became a lot more consistent. It became a lot more robust so that different players would have a more or less similar performance, and it was less dependent on how well the particular player knew how to play Roland.
Hey, Ian, you are our resident math magician. So when you say things like KDR,
Kill to death ratio.
there you go. It sounds more fun when you say it like that.
One thing I wanted to add to that too is when you've got a bunch of alpha testers fighting over who gets Roland first, that's kind of how you kind of know that maybe he's a little good.
I used to not be worried about him, just speaking as a player that's been playing a lot of Margrave for the last couple months. But ever since that change, I've had to pay a lot of attention to him. He's killed me a few times in close quarters, and I was not prepared for that.
Yeah.
We've had a question from our friends on the Twitch stream. They were wondering, two actually, and I'm not sure if these are related, but they might be. Who's the fastest hero? And then the second question is, how do you deal with balance or take care of balance issues with stealth characters, say like Trip?
Yeah. So a couple simple things there. One of the characters is named Taito the Swift. So I will leave it as an exercise for players to guess who
Just
the
to
fastest.
repeat that last word was swift.
Yeah. So yeah, there are actually several characters who can move pretty quickly, but if you focus Taito on movement, he's sort of off the charts compared to everybody else in terms of his ability to get around. And I was laughing so much with that. What was the second part of the question? Stealth. Yeah. Balancing that. So really what you look at is, and this is a great spot where some kind of simple analytics come into play, where we just set some kind of red lines of, we don't want people to die faster than this. We don't want somebody to be able to do burst damage faster than this. And those are numbers that you don't necessarily have going in, but after playing a bit, you're able to kind of define those. And then, obviously, gameplay designers, when they're going in, are trying to stay within those guidelines. But you're able to, red flag any moments when somebody does go outside of them and look for trouble. So with regard to stealth, what we look for is that it's not a one-shot kill, that you've got some amount of time to react in some way. And in our game, because it's pretty fast, some amount of time means like 3/4 of a second. If you've got that much time to do something, then that's what we're looking for. And obviously we can look down the line whether that needs to be a full second or what. But
Generous.
yeah. But that's what we look for is that, I talked about characters being able to feel overpowered, but you can have that moment, but that it's not so asymmetric that somebody on the receiving end feels like, oh, there were no options that I had. That's what we're always looking for, that the things the characters do are extreme, but that the people on the other side feel like they had some options.
Real quickly, go for it.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. Speaking of options, actually in regards to Trip, earlier, she's always been a stealth character, but she was having a time frame where she was really dominating games. And then we added the ability for the Cerberus to detect her on the minimap. And that severely reduced her effectiveness in a lot of games, which is something we really want is players to strategize like, oh, they have a Trip on their team, so we should really make sure we always have a Cerberus up as one of our creatures.
Yeah.
And that does really help.
The Twitch channel would like me to say hi, Melchior. And that they're looking forward to killing you. Not a death talk today. One final question. Is there a hero that's been particularly difficult to find balance with, that you've had to buff and nerf and try to find that sweet spot?
All of them. One of the things I always try to encourage the guys to do is push extremes. And so we'll have a character in, and yeah, sure, we could lower the damage on that and bring it into line, but always be asking the question of, is there something else we can do and let, ability X still feel extreme. Because of that, there's a lot of back and forth on all the characters. I think our typical discussion about the characters, somebody will get owned in a game, we'll say that someone is overpowered, and then, the fun question I always like to ask them is sort of run down the list, and it's like, okay, right, got it, Margrave, overpowered. Gnosis, right, overpowered. Taito, overpowered. Trip, overpowered. And really, we did a little stack rank list just discussing with guys internally, and it was like, okay, your list of overpowered characters and your list of underpowered characters, and it was just ranking them on the overpowered list, which is what I'm going for. And of course, that doesn't mean that there aren't fixes that need to be made. But trying to find that balance while still pushing everybody to feel like that is tricky. And so, yeah, every single one of the heroes has gone through a ton of revisions.
Yeah, it's funny that James mentioned that because after every alpha playtest that we have a discussion, and I'll be taking notes, and someone will be like, oh, this person's really overpowered, and then another person's like, this one's really overpowered, and they go and list like 5 heroes that are really overpowered. I'm like, so really all of them are overpowered? Okay, got it.
Another thing that will happen sometimes is someone who is getting wrecked by a certain character will claim that they're overpowered, and you say like, well, okay, why don't you try them out? And then they play them, and they really struggle to do well. It's like, well, so which, was it just the player? Was it, there's a lot of that as well.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a glib answer. Like, usually those things are problems that we have to solve, and they're things that we work on. I think, if I really did have to single someone out, Zenobia and Vidasi are both tricky. Vidasi, sort of a core concept from a balance standpoint is that she sort of breaks the rules in terms of damage and healing. And as you can imagine, that makes it difficult. Her focus ability is just that she can't take damage for 8 seconds. And so a character that is potentially high DPS going and doing that definitely can be game-breaking at times. And then Zenobia, because she's a control character, anytime you're disrupting what other people are doing, that's difficult to balance because you're balancing not just the effectiveness but the frustration factor.
So next topic?
Yeah. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about is matchmaking. Always a big challenge in a big PvP game. So I'll let Carter, who's actually, in addition to the gameplay stuff that we do, he is in charge of all the competitive and social systems. So.
Yeah, so matchmaking is always a touchy subject. The two main things that we're trying to do with our matchmaking, and for those of you who don't know, matchmaking is the system that takes players from a giant pool which we call the matchmaking queue, and puts them into a game, organizes them into 5 versus 5 teams. So that system, there are 2 main goals we have. One is to minimize the amount of time that you have to wait for a game to start. And then the second one is to ensure that the game is as fair and balanced as we possibly can make it. And as you might imagine, those 2 things are pretty much directly conflicting with each other. And that's why it's such a difficult thing to solve and make not suck, which is our main goal.
Yeah. I will say that problem's easier the higher the player population is.
Yes,
So we're-
much easier.
So part of our strategy is just try to make the game cool so more people play it.
Yeah,
Yes.
everyone
It's-
play the game, please.
Yeah. The bigger our player base grows, the better our matchmaking will work. And that's true of really any game, but especially a competitive PvP game like ours. So in order to minimize wait time and ensure fair games, what we do is there's a matchmaking algorithm that we have that will assign players a score. So when you go into a game as a new player, everyone starts at the same level. And then the more games you play, the more the system calibrates your internal ranking to how good you actually are. And how good you actually are is determined by, are you winning games or are you losing games? And that's really the best way to determine the effectiveness of a player overall. Because if you start looking at other stats like kills or anything, those are easy things to kind of game the system, sit back, get a whole bunch of kills, but not really help your team win. So really the best way is to look at just wins and losses. And then as you play more and more games, the system calibrates and gives you, kind of hones in on where you actually fall in the rankings. And we're going to be using a lot of analytics to help us determine that not only are our games evenly matched, but are they lopsided or are they fair overall? So our main goal is when you go into a game, you have a 50% chance of winning on either team. And that's the most important thing. And you want the game to also feel like at any point you could win. It's not like, oh, these players got matched up and chose the right heroes against us, so we really have no chance. We want the games to feel like you're in it until the very end. And another goal of the system is to make sure that you can play the game as a solo player or as a party of 2, 3, 4, or 5 and have a good time. So we want the matchmaking system to be able to handle any party size or solo players. And another thing we want to do with it is the ability to form a guild or a team and track your rating as a team. So that's really important for us. We'll be releasing a lot more details on that later, but that's a thing that we're going to have.
A thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Guilds.
So, as Carter mentioned, matchmaking is a really big topic in the community because it results in a lot of frustration because who wants to sit around waiting for half an hour for a match to start, but also who wants to get into a game and get rocked by the other team because the ratings aren't equal. So one thing that I would love from our community is just the patience, but also, suggestions for things that you guys think would be great additions to our system. Like, Carter, we were talking earlier about, various games that have the option to, well, I don't really care if it's a fair match. I just want to get in a game now, I'll take that challenge, and just having systems like that are pretty cool. Just various ideas like that are great, and we love to get that kind of feedback. So, let us know if you have any thoughts or suggestions as far as that stuff goes.
Yeah, one of the fun things about matchmaking too, and working on matchmaking is, even when the matchmaking systems are working exactly as intended, it can still feel really terrible when you get steamrolled. Because that does happen, just for various factors, a certain combination of heroes versus the other combination of heroes. Someone's playing a character that they're not used to. So many things can happen throughout the course of the game where it feels like, man, this is so unbalanced. The other team is obviously way better than us. When in reality, you're actually of equal skill. It's just
Somebody's
certain
having
things
a bad
happen.
day.
Yeah, it's easy to blame matchmaking for issues. I know that I, as a fairly competitive player, I'm not saying I'm good, I just have a very competitive mindset. I can get mad sometimes when I lose.
All the time.
But, you know, really evaluate the gameplay. You know, don't come out of a blowout match and say matchmaking, grr. You know, think about your team comp, because, you know, if the other team has a healer and you guys didn't, or if the other team has any kind of support character and you guys didn't, then that could be a reason why you didn't do so hot.
I think that's the interesting thing. You know, when we talk about the basics, the fundamentals of matchmaking, there are a lot of established models and a lot of known problems that are typically solved in particular ways. And you know, there are little knobs we can switch one way or another, try to get better matches or quicker matches or whatever else. But there are also a lot of kind of meta choices that we make that affect it. Gigantic doesn't have a whole suite of different game types that splits up the player base. So we're going to increase your chance of getting better matches with that. And then we can look, when we're talking about matchmaking, not just at things like rating, but also at things like team composition. I know other games also already tackle some of these things, looking at how many of the people on the team are grouped up ahead of time, know each other, because you can assume a certain amount of increase to coordination, things like that. So there actually is a fair amount of subtlety to the different things that you can tackle to try to improve matchmaking experience.
We've got some questions about ranking, player rankings as it relates to individual heroes, recognizing players that are really, really good at playing the game. Let's look into the future and how we're going to do that for folks that are enjoying our game.
Yeah, so in regards to the higher level skill games, as I said before, the more games you play, the more accurate the system is. So if you're playing a lot of games and you're winning a lot of games, you're going to be moving up in the skill rankings. And actually one of our topics later is going to be focused on the more competitive aspects of the game. So I'll save that for in a few minutes, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, and then in regards to the rankings by each hero, that's something we're definitely keeping a close eye on, because it's very important that the system kind of recognizes your overall skill and how that relates to which hero you pick. Because we've seen, even internally in our playtests, someone who is really, really good with a certain hero, but once they venture out into a character that they don't play as much, they do much, much worse.
Yeah.
Are you talking about me?
But
You could just say my name.
But that is exactly what we're talking about, where we can look at sort of a more sophisticated set of criteria. And you don't want to be too speculative about it, right? You wouldn't want to do a naive approach and say, okay, well, so we should track your ranking with every hero separately. But we can do a lot to kind of analyze where the actual patterns are, and how much contribution somebody's overall skill versus their experience with a particular hero should be weighted.
I've got one more question from our Twitch stream from Baz. I just want him to stop asking. I'd love to see matchmaking completely team-based. Are there any plans to do that?
Yes.
In guilds, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
guilds.
was referring to with the guild stuff. So you will be able to form a guild or a team and have a ranking as that guild or team.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah, and just to be clear, that's not to say you can't also solo queue for a different experience, but that there will be, just guild versus guild kind of stuff.
All right, do we have any questions in here? I'm surprised. Mr. Malchior.
Yeah.
Am I saying that right?
Yes, correct.
Damn it.
Talking about set roles, one of the things that Smite did, they tracked your mastery for each hero, and only once you had mastered one at the minimum rank were you allowed to play that hero in a ranked team queue. Have you considered anything use the MMR to match people up, but maybe track their progress as they learn each hero?
I think these are all the kinds of things that are on the table for us.
Yep. Yeah, we're very early on in the actual matchmaking stages for our game, partially because our player base right now is so small that even if we had all these complicated systems, they really wouldn't do anything because there's only 10 people in the queue. So So, but yeah, that is all the stuff that we're going to be looking at. And what we really want to do is take the actual data that's coming from the matches and say, okay, using this data, how can we make our matchmaking better?
Ultimately, these guys are going through a bunch of different permutations of all the different algorithms and processes you can put in place to, band people together. I'm very agnostic as to what is the best method to use, because what we'll be looking at from our end is, are the matches coming out better? Like Carter says, is there observed probability of success for either team close to 50%? Are we getting more people to come back the next day, and are more people staying to play another game? Ultimately, from my perspective, that's what matters most. Are more people playing? Are more people having more fun? So the religious war about, whether we use this number or that index, leave it up to these guys.
Hey, real quick question. Do we have a limit on guilds? Is that something we want to talk about right now, or?
I don't think we want to get into too much detail about that.
Perfect.
Cool.
Those are my favorite questions.
Yeah.
That's a good segue.
I'm always ready with that answer. But yeah, why don't we use that to move into the next topic, which is competitive play systems. So guilds, leagues, tournaments, all that good stuff. Once again, Mr. Carter McBee.
Thank you. So for our competitive systems, what we really want is for everyone of all skill levels to be able to play the game and have fun with it. So our normal matchmaking will be unranked matchmaking. You jump in, you hit play, you wait for a game to be ready, and you play. However, we really want to encourage people to play at a high level, to improve, to reach for the ultimate in, the highest skill level our game can possibly provide. And so we want to support ranked matchmaking as well. So it'll be something that you kind of unlock as you play, so everyone will start out in unranked, and then as you progress, then you unlock the ability to play ranked matches, and then that's where you can really track your progress. So, we'll have leagues where based on your unranked matches, it kind of puts you into a league, and then once you do ranked matches, you'll be able to see where you stack up against all the other players. And then you'll be able to see your skill level as a solo player, or if you're in a guild, you'll be able to have, your guild will have its own ranking as well. And you'll have guild leagues, guild versus guild matches, all that stuff. And another thing that we want to support is tournaments. And again, we're really early on in the process here, so I don't want to go into too much detail, but it is a goal of ours to host our own tournaments, both online and live someday.
Yeah, so I'm just going to answer this question preemptively because I know that it's going to come up. Esports. Do we want our game to be an esport? My feeling about that is that we're not the ones that determine whether our game is an esport or not. It's the players that determine that. What we want to do is provide the systems necessary for that kind of thing and support it if it picks up. We definitely want to have prize tournaments, and we're thinking about competitive systems and all these things to support that stuff. But I don't want to put a label on it personally, is my feeling, because, it just sets an expectation, but you guys are really the ones that fulfill that destiny.
I think that's 100% right, and our goal is for it to be an esport, because that's not going to happen accidentally, right? I think Allie's right that we don't get to decide that it succeeds as that, but we have to choose to try to do it.
Yeah, and that means that we put in all the systems in place for the game to potentially become that, right? And that's, being able to spectate games, having a ranked matchmaking system, having leagues and ladders that you can track your progress, being able to watch other games, being able to watch replays, analyze, what you're doing wrong, having all the statistical data from all your games to analyze, to say, okay, here's how I could get better, to be able to look at the best players in the game and say, okay, what are they doing differently than what I'm doing? How can I get better? How can we improve as a team? What are some strategies that we could come up with to take us to the next level? All that stuff is a result of the systems that we put in to make that easier for players, because really, as a player, you need that type of information to be able to play at the highest level. Otherwise, you're just kind of floundering around like, am I getting better? I don't know. You know, this matchmaking system is going on in the background. I don't know what's going on with it. But we really want to display that information to the players who want to be competitive.
Hey
Yeah,
Carter,
so-
could I get that for real life?
Which thing?
The how I know I'm screwing up and what I can do to be better.
Well, you can just assume that that's happening all the time.
Slam dunk.
Spotlight's on Troy now.
Hey, there is a quick question, and given that the way that we run Community for Gigantic is that we don't really put a barrier in front of our developers and our community peeps. We actually really try to encourage dialogue and to put you in front of a camera or have you do sit-down talks with our fans. Given what you've seen now, and this is for everybody, of our nascent community, in both those folks that are playing actively and can't talk about it because they're under NDA, or those people that are creating our subreddits and supporting all the things that we're doing, what do you think about the community so far?
We really don't like them. We're hoping for a better group of people.
You only have your community managers to blame for that. So.
No, it's been an awesome response so far, and I think we really love to see how engaged people have been, and you know, especially the people who we've brought in and given and put in a position to be able to give us feedback so far. A lot of them have done a fantastic job.
Yeah, that's actually one thing I'm really proud of, to be a Motigan, because the entire company cares about community feedback. I will find a thread on Reddit about, you know, archetypes that people like for heroes, and I'm like, this is so cool, and I send it to our character artist, and we're like, Psh, we already saw that, and I was like, dang, I guess I'm slow. But
I have to say real fast. Please don't say live that we love the wikis too. Okay.
we love the wikis.
We do. We love them. The
You know,
wikias and the
it's-
wikis.
Every time we see a new fan site pop up, we're sending it across the community and across the company as well. Everyone always gets so excited. We're like, oh my god, another new fan site! And we've been really impressed too with how the fan sites are not competing with each other; they're working with each other. You know, we're really trying to promote this very inclusive community, and you know, fan sites are a part of that, which is why we are going to have monthly meetings with fan site runners and owners to talk about, like, what can we do to help support you guys that we're not doing already, or, you know, what can we do to help promote, or, you know, we think about all those things, and yeah. So I think we're really happy with how things are going, and we definitely plan to do more of that kind of stuff.
I think one of the other things, just in terms of community involvement, you know, we just announced the game fairly recently, and as we were organizing that event, you know, we were, you know, getting a space together, figuring out all the technical details of demoing it and getting together a video and all those sorts of things. We're talking about how the event would actually go, and the idea came up of, why don't we bring some of the people from the community there? You know, we're going to be there with press, first time showing the game, and we're going to have some people that don't work for us who haven't necessarily drunk the Kool-Aid, just there kind of experience the game with the press, sort of sharing their own opinions about things, and we felt, you know, good enough about the game, but also good enough about the guys in the community to do that. And that's actually been a philosophy we extended to PAX as well, and it's been pretty awesome so far.
So basically what Finney is saying is be a good community member and we will bring you to PAX Hawaii.
I'll be a good community member.
Yeah,
I
another-
try-
Oh, you might even get me on camera.
My name is Colin, and this might be along the same lines, but being a heavy mobile player, I know in certain games, I'm not going to name them, but the community can be toxic at times, and also you can get, what do they call it, smurfing, you know what I mean, just that type of thing. Are you guys thinking about that type of stuff in advance, or systems in place to help? You know, like with Dota, I know that you can, only on Steam, that kind of limits the smurfing on there, but I mean, I don't know what type of things you guys have in mind.
Yes, we're definitely keeping a very close eye on all of that type of stuff. In regards to the smurfing specifically, one of the things we want to encourage is people to keep their account because they have gone through some progression on that account, and they have all this stuff that they've unlocked, leveled up, that they don't want to lose. So creating another account is really not a benefit to them at all. And John can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
You pretty much said it. Yeah, I mean, I hope the both the account progression as well as potentially even your own guild progression that you're contributing to are strong enough that you don't want to reset yourself with a new account.
Just to smurf. Yeah.
Right, just to smurf. I mean, some people will do it just to beat up on new players, but they should rise pretty quickly in terms of skill rating, which should jump them back up thanks to our awesome matchmaking system.
Yeah.
Hey, real quickly, I wanted to dive in on the not to actually speak to it as much as I wanted us to recognize. We're having discussions behind the scenes about recognizing people for their good work and making sure that that's a big part of what makes the community whole and healthy, and that people who are toxic or people who throw matches or people who are smurfing, all that stuff is going to kind of blend itself into, like a social currency, if you will. But maybe we want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we're trying to get ahead of things. We really want our community to be, generally a happy one. Even if that means they hate the game, but they're still happy in the community and they want to participate in some fashion.
No one's going to hate the game.
And so, we've been really impressed so far with the discussions that have been going on, especially on like Reddit. We see people comparing systems from other games and really diving into what they like about those things. Had something else and just let
Okay,
me.
you can jump back in. We got it.
Yeah.
But Colin, your question is actually a great lead into the next topic, which is social systems. I think it's something that in competitive games is generally overlooked. There's plenty to do, right? Making the game, making sure it plays well, and then the tremendous number of features and the work that goes into competitive play systems, spectating, all the kind of stuff Carter talked about earlier. There's a lot of work there. But at the same time, if you don't do anything proactively, you should assume your community is going to be toxic. And so, some of the design team and just development team in general for Gigantic comes from a bit of an MMO background. And so we've had a lot of conversations over the years about the importance of community and about supporting it on a system level, supporting it on a community level, and thinking up front about how you can create a better experience for everybody who's jumping into the game. So we actually have a lot of ambitious plans that I think we're not going to talk about in a whole lot of detail, but about how we're tackling the social aspects of the game.
Yeah, and as Finney was just saying, we really want to be proactive about this issue as opposed to reactive, because at that point it's too late. A player has gone in and they're really toxic and they put everyone down, and other players have a bad experience. And what we want to do is get in front of that and encourage people to, coach new players, to be helpful to their teammates. And what we really want is the game to recognize that and reward players for doing that and give them a reason to do that. Because in a lot of games, it's just like, well, don't be toxic, don't be an idiot, don't put your teammates down. But what we want to do is encourage you to help your teammates, for your teammates to be able to say, hey, this person really helped me out. And then the game says, oh, okay, that's awesome. We're gonna bump up their reputation level, or, whatever system we use to display that to the players that, hey, you are a good community member. And then as a good community member, here's the rewards you get. And so that's really important to us. And I think that getting in front of the issue, encouraging it up front, and letting people know, like, hey, you will be rewarded for being a great community member, is going to really help with that.
And I think in addition to that, there's all the stuff that we do to encourage and reward players, but it's also trying to be analytical about what are the sources of player-to-player drama. And, we can look at various games, and if you're actually playing them, where does most of the animosity come from? And being able to take a step back, look at those and say, do we have to accept that those are a part of our game, or are there ways we can mitigate the source problem so that players are less frustrated with each other? Taking an approach like that, I think, is also a key to trying to get ahead of the problem. Okay. Any other questions on that? Yeah.
Sorry, I had to wait for my mic. It's hard to do an iPad, drink a beer, and work the microphone at the same time.
Hi, Bryce or Rook with Mostly Harmless Guild. Certainly curious about the option to have training matches, something where we can put our guild against our guild, coach them on TeamSpeak, and say, hey, that was a really good move. This was something you might want to consider in the future, and give them that kind of coaching to improve. Is that going to be an option to set up future matches within your own matchmaking system, I guess?
Yes. It's a very complicated answer, but yeah, exactly. Stuff like that's really important, right? That was it. Yes.
So
Hell's yes.
Just to be clear, our game, we just started alpha last week. We have a very, very small pool of players. Right now, we've been focused on making it fun, so we're still kind of thinking about these systems and coming up with ideas and brainstorming. So actually, if you have thoughts on this stuff, now is a great time to put it up on Reddit and let us know how you think about, some of the things we've talked about here or some of the things you've seen in other games. We're always open to stuff.
And I guess just in terms of building that community, what is the best way to provide feedback? What's the most useful to you to help make the game better from the community? What can the community do better?
So I'm going to actually dive in just real quick to remind folks that we are paying attention to, we've got a lot of fan sites out there. And we've got a lot of people who are supporting us. We have our, gigantic subreddit. We have GG Unleashed. We do have those wikis and those folks. We certainly don't want to forget them because they are getting really cranky about it. No, I'm kidding. They're not. They're being fine. They're being fine. But we're actually paying attention to all of those spots, and I think what we would really enjoy is if there were things that you wanted to share. Reddit is a great spot. Forums for other guilds actually is a great spot as well. So if you've got a really great conversation going on a site that you run, let us know, and we'll drop by and pay attention to what's going on there. That isn't to say that we're going to visit every website on the internet, but we really want to listen to what people are saying, and we want to make sure we're collecting those thoughts. And then for folks who join us in Alpha, we have a pretty robust method of collecting feedback that involves surveys, that involve a secret forum that you can't access unless you're part of the Cool Kids Club, all of that stuff. And so we really are trying all different kinds of ways to gather that feedback, in addition to actually running on-site play tests where people kind of come and visit us in our offices or near us when we're at a convention, and we just take your feedback as you play the game.
I think the other thing to add that is, in addition to looking at individual players or groups out there, because of the nature of the game, sort of team-based combat, we're especially interested in competitive guilds. I mean, mostly harmless. I remember you guys, so we would, after we're done with this panel, why don't we talk?
Yeah, I just want to say, I keep mentioning the Reddit, but that's because right now our community is so small that most of the threads that pop up on other fan sites end up on the Reddit, and so that's a good place to find stuff, but also I do want to shout out to all those fan sites because we do look at them. Yeah, it's really important that you guys stick around. We love you.
We love you all equally.
Okay. I think then the last thing I was going to bring up here is player engagement. And this goes to the Smurfing, but just in general, when we think about what a game, a really good gaming experience can mean to you, it's about having you feel like the time you invested was worth something. You got something out of it, and for us, it's important to look at how are we keeping people engaged over the long term, making them feel rewarded for what they're doing. And so, for probably in unfortunately vague terms, I'm going to let our progression designer John Hargrove talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like we've mentioned previously in the panel, we do have plans for account progression. We're even kicking around guild progression. We'd like you to be able to achieve things both as a solo player and as a group. And one of the biggest parts of my job, going back to the whole toxic community thing, is to identify as many of the positive player actions you can have in our game as possible, and to try to only attach rewards to the positive ones as opposed to the negative ones, if that makes sense. I mean, for example, obviously playing the game is positive, getting kills and assists and proactively playing are positive, whereas if you just give rewards for passively logging in, then you'll get just like players that idle on your team, that lead you to start cursing, that make otherwise good people toxic players. So by just trying to incentivize those positive actions, if I can be a purist about that and only reward positive actions, then I think we can be successful in trying to stave off as much of the toxicity as possible. Also, if all you guys could just not tell your toxic friends about us, that would help.
Problem solved.
Yeah, problem solved, right? It's just like a checkbox at a account creation.
John's actually got a long history working on reward and progression systems, and really looking at how the specific rewards motivate player behavior. I think when we first started talking to him at another company about hiring for that kind of job, it was when I understood what a cheesy bastard he was himself, and that he's
Beep,
willing
beep.
to take.
Can we roll that
come
back?
on.
Can we roll that back?
Take any system and look at how would he abuse it.
Yeah, I'm a griefer at heart.
Yeah, that mindset is really important in designing systems like that. Otherwise, you just create stuff that's open to exploitation.
Yeah.
Another big part of keeping players engaged is, or are, the competitive systems, and making sure that we're tracking rankings and making sure we're encouraging players to get better at the game if that's what they want to do. So, all the ranks and the leaderboards and the ladders and the tournaments will have rewards to them to incentivize you to get better.
Yeah.
Sorry, just one quick point on that. So yes, we're absolutely going to have incredible support for the competitive scene. I also just wanted to reiterate right quick that I'm also trying really hard to look out for casual players that might not necessarily want to be part of a guild, might not care about climbing the ladder. I'm very much looking out for things that they can strive towards as well, because I'm a player that has a fairly low skill ceiling. So I try to look out for myself in that regard, because I'm going to be playing a lot of this game, and I want things to achieve. But absolutely, we have to go all in for both the casual and competitive players, just to make sure we're even about that across the board.
Yeah, I also wanted to touch on, we mentioned earlier that we have a competitive group of testers, and one thing that we've been challenging them as far as their feedback goes with is the depth of our game, and we really want there to be a lot of strategical decisions. And so because of that, it means that, players have to think about their strategies ahead of time. If they want to succeed, they can think how do we need to adjust our strategy mid-game, if the other team is doing much better than them. And I think there's things like that that kind of keep people interested. A lot of people like to theory craft, and I think it's really cool and interesting. And so, we really want to have a lot of depth to our game. So there's relatively high skill ceiling, easy to play, but hard to master kind of deal. So that's kind of something that we talk a lot about internally, but also with our competitive testers.
Yeah. Cool. Other stuff?
Anything more? Questions?
So we're gathering some final questions from our friends hanging out in the Twitch stream, but for the folks in our studio audience, I'm gonna go here first, and then I'm gonna go over to Malkior so we can hang out together and talk.
Hi, I'm Mike, aka Washout, casual gamer, and I just wanted to say I really appreciate the fact that you're going to keep an eye out for us. I know by playing yesterday, I was a great sniper as long as my opponent was running away from me in a straight line. And the cues that were given to me audibly was really good. It's like, come defend the base. Well,
Awesome.
yeah, I wouldn't have known that as a brand new player unless I had someone on my shoulder telling me to do that. So having that in the game was really good. I appreciate
Awesome.
Cool.
Nice. We'll be taking only compliments from now on. Are you sure? All right.
You guys were talking about how like that character Trip has invisibility. You guys ever given any thought to like strategies that involve like backdooring or like stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean that's why stealing power from the Titan is a part of things. I think our Guardian is a part of the game. We have code names for everything internally, so sometimes you'll hear people slip out with them. I think one of the things that we've seen sort of sway back and forth as far as being able to go backdoor and get tactical advantage out of that is depending on how tough the summoned creatures are, that sort of changed the flow of that. And so we have a lot to look at map design, how sturdy the creatures are, and then how much reward there is for stealing power from the Guardian. All those swing things pretty significantly. Also, where people respawn, and sort of where the airship launches you to. All those make a big difference. It's I think a pretty delicate balance, but it's something we're always trying to keep as a viable part of the game.
Yeah, one thing we've been iterating on is the creatures a lot. At one point, we had it so that you could respawn wherever there was a summoned creature on your team. And we got a lot of feedback from our friends and family about the feeling of, or the lack of feeling of battle lines, where there's the push and the pull aspect of the game. And so while we want to still have those like backdoor opportunities, we also have to kind of keep that in mind, like when you respawn, where are you going? Where is your team at? Just finding those things and making sure it's obvious on the mini map is something that is important to us as well. But we definitely have our, Trip is a great little stealthy character, and there are certain people in the alpha that are just so sneaky, and all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, none of the creatures that we summoned in our back line are alive anymore. What happened? So, it's definitely present.
Yeah, the goal is there. The balance on it is tricky because, of course, as we make adjustments to AI, like both the stealing power and the creature interactions are dependent on not just mechanic decisions, but how well the AI is working. And so that makes it a little bit slower to iterate on, but it's a core goal. From a competitive game standpoint, part of my background is RTSs, and there the threat of drops and also the threat of rush are really important, I think. So it's not just a push, that there's a feeling of a central structure to it, but that there are strategic options. I think anybody who played Guild Wars 1 can also see some echoes of that design in this game, and it was not always popular with the European and American crowds, but I was trying to balance it to support a lot of the tactics where you could split and pressure the Guild Lord there, and so we've tried to echo that, with some lessons learned in Gigantic.
So I want to ask a question, and then I'm going to give the honorary last question to Malchior because he's been a badass and has been hanging out with us every single panel that we've done here at PAX Prime, and we do appreciate that. But there's a lot of questions about providing access to data for I know, right? You've been really, really quiet. I thought you were like, wake up, Ian. Our mathemagician, I wanted to ask him, what are we thinking about in terms of providing our community and our fan sites and those folks access to the data?
I want to give them as much data as I can provide for them. It's the challenge for us is basically one of time and resources, because like we're a small company and we're like spending a lot of energy thinking about how to do things right and trying to implement our tracking from the ground up. And that first part is already a challenge for any company. Then building the systems that take the humongous amounts of data that each match generates and making it freely available at a moment's notice to anyone on the globe is a big challenge.
Yeah.
While I'm confident that we will provide all that data to our players eventually, I can't say with certainty that it will be anytime soon, simply because of the size of the challenge. But it's definitely among our top priorities. We, like, one of the best things to do about toxicity and griefing and all that is just put all the evidence out there. It's not about who said who did what. It's look at what happened.
So one of the things that I wanted to clarify before we get to Malkir's question, I think that there is Motiga time and there is regular human time. And when we say not anytime soon, I mean, one of the things coming from a community manager that had to deal with an MMO development cycle, there's something going on within the Motiga offices where time seems to bend and warp, and we make these leaps and bounds. I think it's a little different. Am I high? I just drank a beer. Am I drunk?
I mean, I think we're keeping a pretty good pace so far. It is always an interesting conversation when we bring new people on board and we're talking about, our schedule for things or when we're trying to get stuff done. And people think, so you mean a week from Tuesday? No, I mean Tuesday, like tomorrow, we're going to do that. And then Wednesday, we're going to do this. And Thursday, we're going to do that. Yeah, we definitely try to keep an aggressive pace. I mean, if you think of all the things that we talked about today, there are a lot of features there. And that does take time. But we're always looking at what the actual experience is playing the game, never trying to lose sight of that, always trying to continually make that better. Balancing that in terms of how we distribute our resources with making sure we're laying the foundation for things long term. And when Ian talks about things like wanting to share all the data, it's not an idle, hey, we're at a town hall, say whatever sort of comment. This is something he actually advocates for in meetings, and we've talked about. When he says, not anytime soon, it's because the conversation was, okay, but not right now.
Yeah.
I love that idea, but these engineers have been working on this instead right now. But these are definitely things that we value, and we do try to aggressively attack every day, make sure we're making the game better.
Another thing we wanna
sorry,
do-
go ahead.
Another thing we want to do on that point is not just give players access to the data, but present it in a way that's meaningful to them.
Yeah.
Because we could just open the floodgates and say, here's all the data, do whatever you want, but that's
Good
not
luck.
really helpful as a player. You want to know what's important, like what things should I try to be doing better? How can I be better as a player? And then once you figure that out, you see all the data available to make that happen.
They want to crowdsource my job, so they don't have to pay me.
No way. It's too much
I was just
fun
going to say,
having
I'm
your-
sorry, and you can't leave. Sorry, buddy. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our final question from Malchior, and then what I'd like to do is sort of end on a final comment from each one of you. It doesn't even necessarily need to relate to the specific topic, though that's nice too. And then we're going to actually, so yesterday we were a little late playing our video, so today we are going to share with our Twitch folks the B-roll so that you can kind of check out some gameplay. It's almost like you're playing, so just kind of slap your keyboard around while you're watching, move your mouse and stuff, and you'll feel like you're an alpha. They're seriously going to hate me. All right, Valkyrie, save me.
I can do that. All right. Going back to player engagement, one of the biggest things that keep people playing games are the memories they make. That's why people have been playing Warcraft for 10 years or EverQuest for even longer. So, for any kind of match, have you thought about recording systems? Always recording the match you played, keeping your most recent recording or keeping your 3 most recent recordings. That way you can remember. Because seriously, we just had that press match where they were like, there was 1 point away. It was so hot. Being able to keep memories like that and remembering is what keep people engaged and involved in the game. Are there any thoughts for systems like that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. To answer your question, yes. We do plan to have a replay system where you can watch your most recent replays or potentially save them forever and watch them whenever you want. Actually, speaking to that specific game, Fenny was just talking about that one earlier and explaining in detail everything that happened. So
Yeah, I came away from that and was like, guys, we just had this amazing game.
yeah. So that type of stuff we definitely want to preserve so players can go back and see their awesome performance.
Yes, we will do all of the things. So, yeah.
Yeah, the ones that we can, but that's definitely on the list.
All of the things.
I was
Then
just
he was like, maybe not all
we've
the
been saying
things,
yes to
but
everything, it. I
but
was just
some
like,
of the things.
Yeah, although
Yeah.
we've only been saying yes to stuff that we've actually written down
Yes.
that we were going to do. So,
And I think the other thing too, you know, a lot of the folks on the Twitch stream are like, "You're so open and you're so honest," and I think that you, I share this not as a caution, but as a just the reality is sometimes you're going to like what we're talking about, and sometimes you're not, and you know, we want to do all the things. But we're going to start with the really important things that we think will make this game awesome and will make this community non-toxic. And those are the things that we're going to be focused on. So share your thoughts on it because that's going to have a huge impact on our development. All right, so as we wrap things up, let's start with John Hargrove, which they're now calling Margrove. I'm not sure what that's about. That's sort of weird.
That's awesome.
And then they also said Dat Beard, and so there's three of you with sort of beards, so I think you have to fight to the death to figure out exactly which one is Dat Beard.
pretty sure it's not mine.
I think the ranking of beards is pretty obvious.
Clearly, mine is number one.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello.
All right, John, let's start with you. Anything that you want to say to the people here or the people watching?
Well, I mostly just wanted to say, if you're at PAX, please find some devs. If you have feedback to give, please give it to them. Please talk to us. If you're at home on Twitch, please post to the public fan site forums. Please post to the subreddits. Just tell us what you want this game to be. We are reading it. We are listening. And we want you to like it. So just tell us what you like. Pretty much that, right?
Well, yeah, well, wait.
Oh, drop the mic.
Yeah, exactly. Boom.
Well, he just said what I wanted to say. Cause like I've met a lot of people this weekend. I've been running the LAN space where we have 2 games going at once, and I keep thinking to myself, I'm like, dang, I really want to get those people's feedback. Like, so if you've gotten a chance to play, or if you have feedback just based off of things you've seen in videos, please let us know. We're open to things, and we want to start actually doing some live streams too. So make sure to follow our Twitch channels and our YouTube channels, because there's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming out pretty soon.
And I just wanted to thank everyone here and everyone watching and everyone in our community, because it's been really awesome for me to see a game go from nothing, a new company that no one's heard of before, a new game that no one's heard of before, and to see the kind of following that we have already. And the amount of people on the internet that I see asking for alpha invites is really amazing to me. And I would like to send one to everyone right now, but it'll be very soon that you'll get one, and we'll be ramping our player base up as we go, and more people will be playing, and it's really exciting for me. And so just want to say thank you.
I want to echo what these guys says. First of all, thanks to everyone for all the support. Please do talk to developers and send us any feedback you have. If you're here on PAX, if you have any access to PAX and you haven't played, please play. If you've played once, play twice. If you've played twice, play thrice. And the reason I ask for this is I don't think it's easy to explain the level of complexity that this game has brought to the table. Like these guys here, I've been in games for a long time, and I've sliced and diced game data in a lot of ways. This game has a level of depth and sophistication unlike any other I've ever seen. And it shows in the way that we're presenting new challenges and new experiences to users, but also what that means is there's a lot of unknowns for us as well. And this game reaches a certain level of complexity that there are still holes in the balancing and what things can happen that we haven't figured out yet. We don't know the entirety of our problem space, and we are such a small community. Like many of the people that play every day when we are playtesting are very familiar with the game. They've got their habits. So all these new players that we're getting and all these new sessions is very valuable data this early in development. So I implore you, help us make a better game. We'll thank you greatly for it.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I think echo everything everybody said in terms of getting feedback from guys and just the appreciation to the response that we've had. The Motiga team, even though Motiga is new, it's full of a lot of really veteran developers, and they've been making games for a long time, long enough for us to know that game development every time is a learning process. That you go in with ideas about how things are and how they should work, but that success comes from paying attention to what's actually going on, from trying to recognize your mistakes and fix them, and from trying to really listen to other people on the team, listen to people out in the community. We've come into this project with a really strong commitment to bringing in feedback from players from the start, and to trying to partner with you guys to shape the game that this can be, that it needs to be. And so, you know, this is really us. You know, it's not like here's the angle we're going to use at PAX, right? This is the way we view things and the way we want to make this game. And so, everything you guys can do to help us make it a better game, we really appreciate.
That's a pretty perfect note to end this discussion on. But I do want to remind everybody that tomorrow, 3 o'clock, so this is the last of our development panels. We've had an awesome conversation. We're going to edit these down and cut them up and share, edit them so that John Margrove says some really weird stuff.
Just edit my part out.
Yeah. We're going to edit your beard off. Yeah, exactly. But we're going to put them up on, all the usual social media spaces, YouTubes and the Twitches, and we're going to come to your house and play a video and actually run a panel in your living room. In addition to that, we are going to, tomorrow at 3 o'clock, have a live drawing session with some of our phenomenal artists. It's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. We're actually going to be taking your suggestions, most of your suggestions for many of your suggestions, a couple, and we'll be drawing them. Maybe you'll even see them in gigantic. Probably not, but I do want to thank everybody up here on the panel. When Finney was saying, like, this isn't just a shtick, like, this is really us. Like, you were basically attending a development discussion meeting. It would be like you were sitting in our offices, only there's probably more swearing
Much more.
in our office, and more beer, frankly. Hey, would you do me a favor, folks here, and give our friends here from Motiga a round of applause for...